Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
My husband and I have been together for 8 years. In all that time, I've watched him perfect his cooking skills. He's always been the type to experiment in the kitchen, but about 5 years ago, he stumbled onto something special. He created this hot sauce recipe that's incredible. It's got the perfect balance of heat, sweetness, and the smoky flavor that makes everything taste better. He spent months tweaking it, trying different peppers, adjusting the ratios, adding his own special touches that make it unique. It's become his signature thing at every gathering we go to. The sauce isn't just thrown together randomly either. My husband grows some of the peppers himself in our backyard, sources specific ingredients from particular stores, and has this whole process for making it that takes hours. He's protective of the recipe because a few years back, he shared it with someone he thought was a friend. That person turned around and tried to sell the sauce at a local farmer's market, claiming they invented it. They couldn't replicate it properly because my husband had left out a few key steps when sharing, but the betrayal stung. Since then, he's kept the recipe to himself, only making batches for family events and work gatherings. So back in July, right before we were set to leave for our 2-week family vacation, my husband's boss invited everyone over for a barbecue at his house. My husband always contributes when we go to these things, so he made a huge batch of chicken wings, chicken tenders, and steak tips, all dipped in his hot sauce. We showed up with coolers full of food, and people went crazy for it. There was this newer guy at the company, a co-worker who'd only been there about 3 months. He tried my husband's food and his eyes lit up. He asked my husband where he'd bought the sauce. My husband thanked him and explained that he hadn't bought it anywhere because he made it himself from his own recipe. The new guy seemed amazed and said my husband should consider selling it because it was better than anything he'd ever gotten from a store. My husband just smiled and said he enjoyed making it for special occasions like this. The new guy kept coming back for more food throughout the barbecue, and I noticed him watching my husband pretty closely. At the time, I didn't think much of it. People always love the sauce, and were used to getting compliments. The following Monday, my husband and the new guy got paired up to work a job together. They're both electricians, so sometimes they get teamed up for bigger projects. Things started off fine, but then the questions began. The new guy asked again about the hot sauce from the barbecue, wanting to know where exactly my husband had gotten it. My husband reminded him that he'd already explained at the party that he makes it himself using his own recipe. The new guy then asked if my husband could give him the recipe because he'd love to make it at home. My husband politely declined, saying he doesn't share the recipe. The new guy pushed back, telling my husband not to be like that and to just write it down for him. My husband repeated that he really couldn't share it because he'd had issues in the past with giving it out, so he keeps it to himself now. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. For the entire rest of that week, every single day they worked together, the new guy kept asking. During lunch breaks, while they were running wire, when they were packing up their tools at the end of the day, it was constant. My husband came home frustrated every night that week, but we were leaving for vacation that Saturday, so he figured he'd get a break from it. We went to visit my family out of state for 2 weeks, and it was wonderful. We didn't think about work or hot sauce or anything else. Just relaxed and enjoyed ourselves. When we got back and my husband stopped by the company headquarters to pick up his assignments for the week, guess who was waiting in the parking lot? The new guy spotted my husband's truck pulling in and ran over. He told my husband he was back and mentioned that he'd been thinking about the recipe the whole time my husband was gone. He asked if my husband had time to think about it too and suggested that maybe now he could just share it. My husband told him they'd already talked about this, and the answer was still no. The new guy got defensive and asked why my husband was being so selfish about a stupid recipe. My husband explained that it wasn't about being selfish, but rather that it was his recipe that he'd spent years developing, and he didn't have to share it with anyone. The new guy argued that it was ridiculous because my husband had brought it to a work event, which meant he should share it. This went on for days. The new guy started asking other employees for my husband's radio frequency so he could bother him while he was out on jobs. My husband's boss caught wind of what was happening and told everyone in the office not to give out that information. Then the boss stopped pairing them up to work together, which should tell you how bad it had gotten. The new guy received his first official warning to stop harassing my husband about the recipe. You'd think that would be enough, but no. He kept trying to corner my husband whenever he came into the office. Second warning came shortly after. Then came their last confrontation. My husband was in the break room making coffee when the new guy walked in. The new guy said he didn't understand why my husband wouldn't just give him the recipe, pointing out that it wasn't like my husband was selling it or anything. My husband repeated for what felt like the 100th time that the answer was no, and told him to stop asking. The new guy then declared that he was entitled to that recipe. He claimed that because my husband had brought it to a company event, it was basically company property, which meant my husband had to share it. My husband told him that wasn't how any of this worked and demanded to be left alone. The new guy raised his voice and insisted that my husband was being completely unreasonable, shouting that he deserved that recipe. My husband's boss heard the shouting and came out of his office. He pulled the new guy aside and gave him his second warning, making it crystal clear that one more incident would mean termination. The new guy actually said out loud that he believed he was entitled to the recipe because my husband had brought the food to a work function. The boss told my husband later that day that if there's a third incident, the new guy is gone. No questions asked. My husband just wants to do his job in peace, and now there's this whole situation because someone can't accept the word no. The new guy still works there, but he avoids my husband now. Probably because he knows he's one complaint away from losing his job over hot sauce. So this happened over a decade ago when my girlfriend and I decided to do this massive 3-week road trip across the United States. I'm from the UK originally, and we've been planning this trip for ages. We wanted to see everything, the big cities, the small towns, all the weird roadside attractions, the whole American experience, you know? The trip had been brilliant up until this point. We'd met some genuinely lovely people along the way. Americans get a bad reputation sometimes back home, but honestly, most of the folks we encountered were incredibly welcoming and friendly. They'd give us directions, recommend local spots to eat, and some even invited us to family barbecues. It was one of those experiences that really restores your faith in people. We'd been on the road for about 2 weeks at this point, and we'd fallen into this nice rhythm. Drive during the day, find a decent motel, then head out to explore whatever town we'd landed in. This night, we'd arrived in this mid-sized city, somewhere in the Midwest. I won't say exactly where because, well, you'll see why in a minute. It was getting late, probably close to midnight, and my girlfriend and I were standing on the street trying to decide which bar to check out. There were a few options nearby, and we were debating the merits of each one when I noticed this commotion across the street. This guy, absolutely plastered drunk, was fumbling around near a lamppost. When I watched, his wallet slipped out of his pocket and hit the pavement. Bank cards went flying everywhere, scattering across the sidewalk like someone had thrown a deck of cards in the air. He was so drunk he could barely coordinate himself to pick them up. Thankfully, he had a friend with him who was considerably more sober. The friend helped him gather up all the cards, and they seemed to get everything sorted. The drunk guy then staggered about 20 feet away from where he'd dropped everything, pulled out a cigarette, lit it up, and then just chucked the empty packet back toward where they'd been standing. Then he literally collapsed onto the ground, like his legs had just given up on him entirely. His friend was trying to help him up when I noticed something they'd both missed. There, still lying on the pavement under the lamppost, was what was clearly a driving license. It must have fallen out when the wallet dropped, and in all the chaos of picking up the bank cards, they'd completely missed it. I'm not the sort of person who just walks past something like that. If it were me, I'd want someone to tell me. So I cupped my hands around my mouth and yelled across the street to get his attention. I told him that his driving license was on the floor right there and pointed directly at it so he could see exactly where I meant. He lifted his head up from where he was slumped on the ground, squinted in my direction, and then yelled back at me. He said it was just a cigarette packet and told me to screw off back to England, adding a homophobic slur at the end. I just stood there completely stunned. My girlfriend grabbed my arm, equally shocked. I mean, I'd just been trying to help the guy, and he comes out with that? The slur was completely uncalled for, and I'm not even gay, not that it would matter if I was. But beyond the sheer nastiness of his response, I was also just baffled because it definitely, 100%, was not a cigarette packet. It was clearly a driving license. I could see it from where I was standing. Something just snapped in me. I wasn't gonna stand there and take abuse from some drunk idiot when I'd literally just tried to do him a favor. So I walked over, picked up the driving license, and held it up so he could see it if he was paying attention, which he wasn't. I said loud enough for him to hear that if I was going to screw off back to England, I supposed I'd need a souvenir. Then I shoved the license straight into my pocket. My girlfriend's eyes went wide, and she had this expression that was half shock and half trying not to laugh. We started walking toward the bar we'd originally been planning to go to, and I felt this weird mixture of satisfaction and adrenaline. I'd never done anything like that before in my life. We'd only made it about 2 minutes down the street when I heard footsteps running behind us. I turned around and saw the friend, the more sober one, jogging toward us. For a second I thought there might be trouble, but when he got closer I could see he just looked mortified. He apologized for his mate back there and explained that his friend had way too much to drink and didn't mean what he said. Then he asked if I'd found his license because he was going to need it. The friend seemed like a genuinely decent person who was just stuck babysitting an absolute nightmare. I felt a bit bad for him, but not bad enough to just hand over the license. The drunk guy could have apologized himself if he'd wanted it back, but he was still slumped on the ground being useless. I pulled the license out of my pocket and, in one smooth motion, threw it hard into this massive hedge that ran along the building next to us. It disappeared completely into the thick foliage. I told him it was somewhere in there and wished him good luck. I pointed vaguely at the hedge, nowhere near where I'd actually thrown it. And then my girlfriend and I ducked into the nearest bar before the friend could say anything else. We ordered drinks and tried to settle our nerves. My girlfriend kept giggling about the whole situation, and I was still processing what had just happened. About half an hour later, curiosity got the better of me and I peeked out the bar's front window to see if they were still out there. They were, both of them. The drunk guy had apparently sobered up just enough to realize he actually did need his license, and they were both searching through the hedge. But here's the thing, they were looking in a completely different section, about 20 feet away from where I'd actually thrown it. I pointed them in the wrong direction, and they just believed me. I watched them for a few minutes, pawing through branches and leaves, getting absolutely nowhere. My girlfriend came up beside me and looked out the window. She asked if I thought they'd find it. I told her not a chance. We finished our drinks, left through the back exit, and walked back to our motel. I'd be genuinely surprised if that guy ever found his license. For context, I've had Bruno for some years now. He's a golden retriever mix, the gentlest soul you'd ever meet. I rescued him from a shelter after my divorce when I desperately needed something good in my life. Walking him became my therapy, my routine, my escape from the mess my life had become. Every morning at 6 and every evening at 5, we'd walk the same route through our neighborhood park. About 6 months ago, a stray started showing up during our evening walks. Big guy, looked like a German Shepherd mix. Scruffy but not aggressive. Bruno took to him immediately, and honestly, so did I. I started bringing extra food for him. Never tried to take him home because my apartment only allowed one pet, but I made sure he was fed. Bruno and this stray, let's call him Shadow because of his dark coat, became genuine friends. They'd play together while I sat on the bench, and Shadow would disappear when our walk was done. The trouble started about 2 weeks ago when this woman moved into the house bordering the park. I'd seen her around, always scowling at something or someone. She had this energy that just screamed, looking for problems. Last Tuesday evening I was at our usual spot. Bruno was playing with Shadow, just doing their thing, staying well away from everyone else. They were near the fence line but still clearly in the public park area. I was watching them, smiling at how happy Bruno looked when this woman came storming out of her back gate. She started yelling about how those disgusting animals were too close to her property. I calmly told her that they were in the public park, not on her property. She didn't care and kept screaming about how that filthy stray was probably diseased and demanded I get them away from her fence. I tried to explain they were just playing and would move in a minute, that we weren't bothering anyone. I called Bruno over to me trying to de-escalate things. He came trotting over, tail wagging, completely oblivious to the danger. Shadow stayed back watching cautiously. That's when things went sideways fast. Karen bent down, picked up a rock from her garden bed, and threw it hard at Bruno. It hit him right in the ribs. He yelped and tried to run back to me, and this psycho picked up another rock and threw it at him again. This one got him in the leg. I shouted at her, asking what the hell was wrong with her and begging her to stop. I was already running toward Bruno, my heart pounding. He was limping, whimpering, trying to get away from her, but she wasn't done. She picked up a third rock, a bigger one this time. She screamed that she'd teach me to bring my dirty animals near her house. She pulled her arm back to throw again. That's when Shadow, who had been watching from about 20 feet away, charged. I've never seen an animal move that fast. He was on her before she could release the rock. Now, I'm not going to lie and say I felt bad watching it happen. This woman had just assaulted my dog twice, was going for a third time, and Shadow did what any loyal friend would do. He knocked her down and went for her arm, the one holding the rock. She was screaming, flailing, and Shadow wasn't letting go. I yelled at Shadow to get off, repeatedly commanding him to back away. It took me a few seconds to get there, and Shadow did back off when I got close, but the damage was done. Her arm was bleeding pretty badly, her clothes were torn, and she was hysterical. Shadow backed away, positioning himself between her and Bruno, still in protective mode. I immediately pulled out my phone and called emergency services. I told them we needed an ambulance and police. While we waited, she was screaming threats at me about how that monster had attacked her, how she was going to sue me, and how I was going to pay for this. I told her flatly that she had thrown rocks at my dog twice and hit him both times. I told her there were cameras in this park and I had everything on my phone, that she had assaulted my animal first. She shrieked that he was threatening her. I pointed out that he was playing with another dog 20 feet away from her, that she had come out and attacked him unprovoked. The ambulance arrived first, then the police. While the paramedics worked on her, I gave my statement to the officers. I showed them the videos I'd taken on my phone after the first rock hit Bruno. I started recording when I saw her pick up the second one, so I had clear evidence of her throwing rocks at my dog and her going for the third one when Shadow intervened. The officer looked at my footage, then looked at Bruno, who was still limping and had a visible wound on his side. He asked if I'd gotten my dog checked out yet. I said I was about to take him to the emergency vet when this happened. He told me I should do that now and get documentation of his injuries. He said from what he was seeing, I had a solid case for animal cruelty against her. The other officer was taking Karen's statement, and I could hear her lying, saying that both dogs had charged at her unprovoked, that she was just defending herself. But the video didn't lie. She kept insisting this was ridiculous, that she was the victim, pointing at her injured arm. The officer told her they had video evidence of her throwing rocks at my dog before any animal touched her, and that they'd be in touch. I took Bruno to the emergency vet immediately, and he had bruised ribs and a gash on his leg that needed stitches. The vet documented everything, took photos, gave me copies of all records. The bill was $600. The next morning I went to the police station and filed formal charges against her for animal cruelty and assault on my dog. I brought all the vet records, the bills, and my videos. The officer I spoke with told me they'd also reviewed the park's security footage, which backed up my version completely. By that afternoon, she'd been charged. Her lawyer apparently tried to argue that Shadow was my dog and I'd trained him to attack, but that fell apart pretty quickly when animal control confirmed Shadow was a known stray, was no owner, and my videos clearly showed he was separate from me and Bruno until she attacked. The court date was set for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, she tried everything. She filed a countersuit against me for her medical bills and pain and suffering. She claimed emotional distress. She even tried to get Bruno taken away and put down, claiming he was dangerous. That last one made my blood boil, but animal control investigated and cleared Bruno completely. They could see from all the evidence that he'd been the victim. During those 6 weeks, I kept walking Bruno at the park. Shadow still showed up most evenings. Karen would watch from her window, glaring, but she never came outside again. I made sure to document every walk, just in case. Other neighbors actually came up to me and told me they were glad someone finally stood up to her. Apparently, she'd been terrorizing the whole block since she moved in, complaining about everything, calling code enforcement on people for minor violations, threatening lawsuits, left and right. One neighbor told me she'd called animal control on his cat for being in his own fenced backyard. Another said she'd tried to have their kid's basketball hoop removed because the sound bothered her. Everyone had a story about her, and several offered to testify on my behalf if needed. The court date finally came. I showed up with my lawyer, all my evidence organized and ready. Karen showed up with her lawyer and an arm brace, really playing up the injury. The proceedings started, and the prosecutor laid out the case. They showed the videos, the vet records, the park security footage, everything. Her lawyer tried to paint me as a negligent dog owner who couldn't control my animals. The prosecutor pointed out that Bruno had been leashed and under my control until Karen attacked him, and that Shadow wasn't my dog at all. They showed how she'd left her property specifically to assault my dog, how she'd thrown rocks at him twice and was going for a third time when Shadow intervened. Several neighbors testified about her aggressive behavior toward other people and animals in the area. One had even captured her on their doorbell camera screaming at their elderly dog for barking during the day. The evidence was overwhelming. The judge didn't take long to deliberate. Karen was found guilty of animal cruelty. She was fined $2,000, ordered to pay my vet bills, and given a year of probation. The judge also issued a restraining order requiring her to stay at least 100 feet away from me and Bruno. Her countersuit was dismissed entirely. But here's what happened 2 weeks after the court date. I was walking Bruno in the evening. Shadow had joined us like usual when I saw a moving truck in front of Karen's house. She was leaving. Apparently, the combination of the criminal conviction, the fines, and the fact that all her neighbors now openly despised her was too much. She was moving out. When I walked past with Bruno and Shadow, she was supervising the movers from her driveway. She saw us and her face went red, but she didn't say a word. She just turned away and went back into her house. The restraining order meant she couldn't come anywhere near us anyway. I heard later from a neighbor that she'd actually tried to sell the house but couldn't find a buyer quickly enough, so she was renting it out and moving across town. Either way, our problem was solved. Bruno's fully healed now. His limp went away after a few weeks, and he's back to his happy, playful self. Shadow still meets us for evening walks, and I've been working with a local rescue to see if we can get him properly vetted and into a foster home. I moved into a rental house in a small town about a month ago. I'd just gotten out of a messy roommate situation and needed a fresh start somewhere quieter. I work remotely as a customer service supervisor, so I can live anywhere as long as I have decent internet. This place seemed perfect. Small, affordable, quiet neighborhood, or so I thought. The problem started right away. Within the first week, my mailbox was overflowing with mail that wasn't mine. Bills, advertisements, credit card offers, all addressed to someone else. I did what I thought was right. I wrote "Return to sender not at this address" on every single envelope and put them back in the mailbox with a flag up. I figured the post office would handle it and the previous tenant would update her address like a normal person. But the mail just kept coming. Every single day, more and more of it. I asked my landlord about the previous tenant when I signed the lease, just out of curiosity. He got this uncomfortable look on his face and told me she'd been evicted. When I toured the house before moving in, I could tell it had been trashed. There were stains on the carpet, the walls needed repainting, and the whole place had this neglected feeling to it. The landlord had cleaned it up the best he could, but you could still tell it had been treated badly. He mentioned something about her having a lot of people coming and going at all hours, which was part of why she got evicted. I didn't think much of it at the time. I just wanted a place to live. About 2 weeks ago, things got weird. I was at my desk working, answering emails and handling customer complaints when I heard aggressive honking from my driveway. My office window faces the road, and I keep the blinds open because I like the natural light. I looked up and saw a car I didn't recognize pulled right up to my house. A woman was sitting in the driver's seat waving frantically at me. She had this huge cast on her wrist. I stared for a second, confused, but she wouldn't get out of the car. She just sat there waving and gesturing. I didn't know who she was. I'm a woman living alone in a new area where I don't know anyone yet. For all I knew, this could be some kind of setup. Maybe she was trying to lure me outside so someone could rob me or worse. I've watched enough true crime documentaries to know better than to just walk outside when a stranger shows up honking. So I grabbed my phone, started recording, and moved away from the window where she couldn't see me. She sat there for a few more minutes, then eventually drove off. The next day, same thing. She pulled into my driveway, honked repeatedly, and waved at me through the window. I hid again, staying out of sight. This time she got more aggressive. She rolled down her window and screamed toward my house that she wanted her mail. I had no idea what she was talking about. I didn't know this woman. I wasn't about to open my door for someone who was acting this unhinged. After she left, I went outside to check my mailbox because I was expecting a package. It was gone. My package, the one I'd paid for and been tracking, was missing. That was it. I called the non-emergency police line and explained what had been happening. I described the woman, her car, and told them my package had disappeared right after her second visit. The dispatcher said they'd send an officer out to talk to me. About 20 minutes later, a police car pulled up, and right behind it was her, the woman from the driveway. This is a small enough town that they found her fast. The officer got out and acted as a neutral party while she explained her side. She told us that she had informed delivery set up for this address, and when she saw mail with my name on it, she found me on Facebook. She said she'd sent me a message asking me to save her mail for her, but I'd never responded. I pulled out my phone and checked. Sure enough, there was a message request from someone I didn't know in my spam folder. It was just some random question that made no sense, nothing about mail. I showed the officer and explained that any mail coming here that wasn't mine got marked "Return to sender." I told them I'd even taped a note on my door saying the same thing, and that I didn't know this woman. I explained how she'd scared me showing up like that, honking and yelling. She said she only honked because she was scared of my dog. I almost laughed. My dog is a 10-pound Chihuahua. She's about threatening a stuffed animal. I asked her about my missing package, and she insisted she didn't take it. The officer looked between us. He seemed to believe her, or at least could improve otherwise. My package still hasn't shown up to this day. Eventually, things calmed down enough that they both left, but I was furious. This woman still had informed delivery access to my address, which meant she could see every piece of mail coming to my house. She'd found me on Facebook. This felt like a massive invasion of my privacy. I called the post office the next day and asked them to remove her informed delivery access for this address. They said they'd handle it. The police had been involved. She knew I wasn't going to give her the mail. Case closed. But yesterday, she came back. Different car this time, pulled in just aggressively before. She honked, rang my doorbell 3 times in rapid succession, then started banging on the door. She yelled that she knew I was in there and demanded I give her the mail. I stayed inside hidden, not making a sound. My heart was pounding. After a minute of banging, she gave up and drove off fast. I'm not running a free storage service for someone's junk mail. I found out from a neighbor that she was evicted because she had people in and out of here constantly and completely trashed the place. That explains the condition it was in when I moved in. I just want to live peacefully in my own home without someone harassing me about mail I've already tried to return. I work at my local chicken sandwich restaurant on and off. Started when I was in high school, left for college, and came back part-time because the pay isn't bad, and the schedule works with my classes. For those who don't know, I work the face-to-face position in the drive-thru. That's the person you see standing outside with the green vest and those two money pouches strapped across their chest, taking orders and payments directly at your car window. It's actually not a terrible job most of the time. Yeah, you deal with weather and the occasional rude customer, but it keeps you moving and the shifts go by pretty fast. The money pouches are pretty standard. We carry cash and cards, process payments right there, and keep the line moving quickly. That's kind of the whole point of our restaurant's drive-through system. We're supposed to be fast and efficient. Now, here's the thing about those pouches. There's a safety protocol we're supposed to follow. When you're carrying cash on you like that, especially during busy dinner rushes or late at night, you're not supposed to let it build up too much. The rule has always been that once your pouch starts getting heavy with cash, you radio inside and someone comes out to do a cash drop. They take the excess bills, you keep enough to make change, and everyone stays safe. It makes sense for two big reasons. First, it's legitimately dangerous to be standing outside in a parking lot at night with hundreds of dollars strapped to your body. Second, those pouches can only hold so much before they're literally bursting at the seams. This system worked fine for years. Whenever my pouch got full, I'd radio in, wait maybe 2 minutes for someone to come swap out the cash, and keep going. No big deal. Then Monday happened. Our general manager called a meeting before the dinner shift. She seemed stressed about drive-through times or something. She told us all to listen up and explain that corporate was putting pressure on us about speed of service numbers. Our times were slipping and she needed to fix it immediately. I asked her what she wanted us to do differently. She said no more cash drops during rush. She explained it was wasting time and she went on about how, when we radio in, someone has to stop what they're doing, walk outside, do the exchange, and it's adding 30 seconds to every transaction and killing our times. My co-worker asked what we should do if our pouches got full. The general manager said they wouldn't get that full if we were moving fast enough. She told us to just keep the line going and not to request cash drops unless it was an absolute emergency. I exchanged looks with my co-worker. This seemed like a bad idea, but she's the general manager and we're just part-timers. What were we going to say? Fast forward to last night. Thursday nights are always busy, and last night was insane. Cars wrapped around the building for hours. And wouldn't you know it, everyone was paying with cash. 20s, 50s, and I kid you not. At least 6 people paid with $100 bills. My pouch was getting so stuffed that I literally started folding bills in half just to make them fit. The thing was bulging. I kept looking at it thinking about radioing for a cash drop. But I remembered what our general manager said. No cash drops. Keep the line moving. Around 8:30, when it was fully dark outside, a black Dodge Charger pulled up to my spot. The window was tinted so dark I couldn't see inside at all. The driver's door opened and a guy got out. That alone was weird. Customers don't usually get out of their cars. He walked around the front of the car toward me. I started to greet him and ask if I could take his order, but he cut me off immediately. He demanded I give him the money right then. His hand was in his jacket pocket, pointed at me like he had something in there. My heart just stopped. I'm not stupid. I immediately unclipped both pouches and handed them over. He grabbed them and got back in his car. The whole thing took maybe 15 seconds. Then he just drove off. I stood there shaking, trying to process what just happened. Another car pulled up and the customer asked if I was okay. That snapped me out of it. I radioed inside that I'd just been robbed and needed someone outside immediately. The shift leader came running out, then called the police and our owner. The police came, took my statement, got the description of the car and the guy. They were professional about it and told me I did the right thing by just handing everything over. But then our owner showed up. The owner was absolutely fuming. Not at the robbery, at me. He asked if I had any idea how much money I just lost him. Over $700. He demanded to know why the hell I had that much cash on me and why I didn't call for a cash drop. I explained that our general manager told us on Monday not to do cash drops anymore because it was slowing down drive-through times. The owner seemed shocked and asked what I meant. I repeated that she said no more cash drops unless it was an absolute emergency. She told us it was wasting time and hurting our speed of service numbers. The owner's face went from red to purple. He immediately went inside, and I could hear him yelling through the headset. Our general manager came outside looking pale. The owner asked her if it was true and whether she really told us to stop doing cash drops. She started to stammer that she just meant to limit them during rush hours, but the owner cut her off. He asked if she realized she'd just cost him $700 and put his employees in danger. He wanted to know what she was thinking. She didn't really have an answer for that. This morning when I came in for my shift, there was a new printed policy taped up in the break room. Cash drops are now mandatory once your pouch exceeds $300. No exceptions. Zero tolerance. And here's where it gets good. Our general manager has been on my case all day today. She kept coming up to me asking what my drawer count was. I told her it was about 200. 30 minutes later, she asked again what my drawer count was. I said 250. 20 minutes after that, she asked how much cash I had. I told her 300 and that I was about to call for a cash drop. She said good and told me to do that right away. She's been hovering like this all day, obsessively checking everyone's cash counts. Funny how suddenly she cares so much about safety procedures after the restaurant lost $700 and got a massive liability issue dropped in the owner's lap. I'm just glad I didn't get hurt. And watching her squirm all day while the owner keeps giving her dirty looks has been the only silver lining to this whole mess. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.